Buongiorno e benvenuti a tutti, qui è Claudio Panerai, responsabile tecnico di ACAB. Oggi sono con Luis Giraldo o Luis Giraldo, Product Manager di IT Glue, e oggi parliamo di come costruire un business milionario con 2 persone di staff. Naturalmente non sarò io a dirvi come sia possibile costruire una cosa del genere, ve lo racconterà Luis perché è una cosa che ha fatto in passato e sta tuttora gestendo un business milionario con poche persone di staff, ha distillato per noi, diciamo così, alcune pillole, 9 trucchi che lui usa e condivide con noi per costruire e gestire un business di questo tipo. Facciamo una velocissima agenda di quello che facciamo questo pomeriggio. Prima partiamo con un piccolo survey conoscitivo per capire chi c'è in ascolto, poi lasciamo naturalmente la parola a Luis Giraldo perché è lui che ci deve dire tutto, come si fa, e al termine siamo liberi di fare una sessione di domande e risposte. Potete scriverle nella chat in italiano, in inglese, come volete. Per favore scrivete in maniera chiara, così poi possiamo tradurle ed eventualmente chiederle a lui. Allora, parto subito facendo un survey che vi chiedo di compilare, tanto diciamo così non verrà visualizzati i nomi con i risultati fra di voi, è un webinar nostro interno conoscitivo del mercato per gestire e documentare le reti dei tuoi clienti. Che cosa fai? Usi sistemi come RMM e fai solo RMM, oppure sei già a posto e sei solo curioso, oppure non usi nessuno dei 2 sistemi. Cito naturalmente sistemi RMM di IT Documentation perché sicuramente Luis nella sua presentazione dirà che bisogna ottimizzare, gestire, ridurre i costi e quindi sono sicuramente sistemi a cui farà riferimento pur senza fare, diciamo così, nessuna pubblicità particolare. Aspetto ancora qualche istante perché vedo che si stanno muovendo i voti, diciamo così, il vostro outing. Dopodiché lascio immediatamente la parola a Luis che insomma hai da insegnare a tutti, ecco, perché ci racconterà anche la sua storia da dove arriva. Lascio ancora qualche secondo, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 e andiamo a chiudere. Grazie mille per aver votato. Adesso io quindi passerei immediatamente la parola a Luis. So, welcome to Italy. I mean, you are in Canada, but welcome to Italy anyway, Luis. Thank you for
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation.
And I'll make you presenter immediately so that you can explain us how to build a millionaire business with such few stuff. There you go. You should be presenter now.
Okay.
Great.
Alrighty. Well, thank you so much, Claudio, for the invitation. Andrea as well, who I had the opportunity to meet in London for IT Nation last February. We had a really interesting conversation just about, you know, how Italian businesses are growing and the type of difficulties that they have in growing their business. And so what was interesting to me as a parallel is that one of the things I talk about a lot in how I've grown my business is that ACAB is very standardized on a specific set of products, and I think that's a very important thing. You'll see why as I get through that part of the presentation. But thank you again. Welcome to the webinar this morning. I do have a small managed services provider IT company. I've been doing my own thing for about 12, 13 years now, since 2006. And I've always had this sort of technical inclination. I have a music background. In fact, I grew up playing keyboards and always was curious about getting keyboards connected to the computer. I had one of those early Sound Blaster audio cards with the MIDI inputs, and when I was first able to get the keyboard notes onto the computer, I felt like I was a computer heaven. Anyways, I had my own company for a little while, which I sold to a larger MSP here in Vancouver back in 2011. And then I left again after a year. I just wanted to continue doing my own thing. And I started a software company in 2013 called Monkeybox to do documentation. In 2013, I was bringing on a business partner to my business. I was going from being alone to having one business partner. And I feel like that was the genesis or the beginning of trying to think about growth. One of the things I knew that I wanted to do was share a little bit of the accountability in the business. It was always very difficult to feel like I had all the responsibility and feel like I could never take a vacation or any time off. And so one of my prime motivations for having a business partner was sharing a little bit of that accountability. So I brought on that business partner in 2013, and we had some pretty high goals, and I'll talk a little bit about that. I did play keyboards with Shakira in Colombia before I left Colombia and moved to Canada in 1997, actually, 20 some years ago. I understand she was recently doing a concert in Milano, maybe. I just saw some video the other day. Anyways, that's my fun fact for the day. Yes, I've seen her dance from all angles, and so I always get the question. The IT Glue story is really interesting as well. At the same time that I was starting my own documentation company, Chris Day, our CEO, was beginning the journey with IT Glue as well. And so also founded in 2013, they launched in 2014, and these numbers are, it's crazy to me. I leave some of these old numbers on there on purpose because I've been presenting this for about 8 months, but now we're already at over 4,300 partners. We have over 65,000 user accounts in IT Glue, about 30,000 active weekly users, and we're currently at about 100 employees. And so the growth in IT Glue has been really spectacular. And I think this really speaks to how important people are starting to realize that documentation is for the growth of their own business, excuse me. So I wanted to talk about 9 things that over many years of having my own business, I sort of have looked back and thought, hey, you know, these are some of the things that maybe we were doing right that helped the business grow. I'll be honest in telling you that I did not always know all the answers along the way. There was a lot of trial and error. There were some mistakes made along the way as well, and I think that's part of the fun. I don't know that growing a business and making no mistakes would be, you know, a fun adventure at all. So I'm happy I've made lots of mistakes along the way and learned a few things, and been able to correct and pivot the direction of the company. So my first concept is why, el porqué, the why of your company, why you do what you do. What's very interesting is customers, I've learned, are very interested in buying the why. They are not so interested in buying, you know, the specific outcome. Interestingly enough, they sometimes prefer to associate and do business with somebody who can clearly articulate the reason why they do what they do. And I think this shows a lot of passion. It shows customers that they are committed to doing a great job and to having a great relationship. And this is attractive to customers. I have enjoyed many year-long relationships with many of my customers as a result, and I think I can attribute this to the why. And so thinking about the why, it's important to understand the difference between purpose and mission. Because many companies, when they start, they'll set out a mission and they say, oh, it's our mission to, you know, give value to our shareholders, or it's our mission to be profitable. And those things are important targets, but they're not the reason why you or your staff are going to get up in the morning to do the work they do. And so I think it's important to have a good sense of purpose, and to be able to rally around your company values and that core purpose. It's so critical. In my case, the important thing for me was the brand promise. And so as a single business operator, a one-man show, if you will, I had to be able to deliver to my customers some kind of peace of mind that I was going to take care of business. And the reason is, as you're trying to grow your business and get some customers that are a little bit larger, that spend a little bit more money, always the biggest concern that they had was, well, but you're a one-person business. What happens, you know, if you get hit by a bus? The very typical question. Or what happens if you go on vacation? And so it's very difficult to convince people that, oh, well, even if I'm on vacation, I'll take your phone call and help you. That's not the kind of thing that gives them a lot of peace of mind. But having something that they can clearly envision, for me, it was the saying, the buck stops here. And this is an American saying that really means I'm ultimately responsible. And if I can't take care of your business, then nobody can. Ultimately, I'm responsible, and I want to make sure you succeed. And this is why I'm here to deliver a service to you. So that was important. I think that sort of removed a little bit of the conversation around, you know, what happens if you're on vacation, all those things. I wanted to explain that there was a clear commitment to the relationship and a clear commitment to delivering great service. And it took a little while. It took a little while to get people comfortable with how I was very dedicated to doing work for them and always available. And it was a lot of long hours in the beginning until I started to work largely with the 9-to-5 businesses. So something that is important for you to think about as you are considering this idea of a purpose or the why is the one thing that you could consider the drop dead requirement. You know, if everything else failed in your business, this is the one thing that people can come together around to say, this is why we're going to show up to work tomorrow. And I think going through the exercise of discovering what that is in your business can be a really exciting thing to do. So I highly recommend going through that and understanding what the why is in your business. Leadership versus management is another important role in there. I think as we start to grow businesses, many of us have started as technicians. We were great at IT and we wanted to start a business and we saw an opportunity, but maybe we were not that great at building or growing a business. We just simply were good at IT. And so I see a lot of MSPs start the same way and ultimately struggle a little bit with the business aspect, as did I. I think I learned along the way, but I was very receptive. I was very hungry to learn. And so one of the key things for me, even with customers, is to be in a position of leadership for customers as well as for staff. I don't know that I speak too much about managing my customers as much as I speak about leading my customers. And the reason this is an important distinction is because customers ultimately look to us as the experts in technology, and to be able to do this with a leadership style and not with a management style, I think has a big impact. It's interesting to me that when I go around looking at people's websites, other IT providers, many of them are talking about, you know, technical things. They're posting technical articles on their website, and I just can't help but think that most customers that they serve probably don't care about those things. And so it's important to have a little bit of that leadership about their business or their vertical and be able to talk about that. So idea number 2 is all-in seat pricing. I struggled with this one quite a lot in the beginning because when you start to build a business, people will tell you, oh, you need to have a silver and a gold plan, or a bronze and a silver and a gold plan, and then you put in different things in different plans so you can charge more or less or what have you. But I find that this quickly became a competition of the customer trying to always pay the lowest plan, and me always trying to sell them the highest plan. And so about 1 year after trying to do the multiple plan thing, I simply got rid of the plans and I just did, there's one plan, one pricing. In Vancouver here, we charge roughly between 100 and 125 Canadian dollars per user per month. So typical 10-person business or 20-person business might pay $2,500 a month Canadian or $1,500 a month Canadian. We typically have a 10-person minimum, that we charge, and that's sort of where we have realized that anything less than that is very difficult to provide value to them. So the all-in seat pricing is really interesting. I also see a lot of people starting a business and they are very uncomfortable with the idea of charging a higher price. There's a number of reasons for this. Perhaps you just don't feel comfortable, you don't feel it's worth it, you're having difficulty explaining why the service you're delivering is worth that price. Obviously, different cities or different areas have a little bit of a different scale. I realize that in some smaller cities, the price might be less. In some bigger cities, for example, in New York, I see people charging anywhere from $175 US per user per month to $250 US per user per month. So clearly there's a big range. In Vancouver, 100 to 125 seems to be the range. But most importantly, I think what I realized was that as you start to build a business, it's important to be able to layer additional services into that all-in seat pricing. It's how you can deliver additional value to your customers. Ultimately, what this translates into is maybe people will end up offering these things as different menu items, and so customers will subscribe to security service and then just pay extra as a separate line item. But in my case, I found that it was easier to simply include everything as part of the platform. And I use that term with my customers, the platform. And so early on in me building my business, I remember I spent a lot of money at the very beginning to buy my RMM, and I was 100% Mac focused when I first started. And so I bought Jamf, which is previously known as Casper Suite. And at the time, I remember I spent about $11,000 to buy the licensing and do the jumpstart that was required with training and everything else. So it was a very scary spend, but the focus and that it gave me was really on standardizing on that platform, which brings me to the conversation about standardization. Very early in my career, I remember I was a little bit of a Cisco snob. I wanted every customer to have Cisco routers and Cisco switches. In many cases, it was very difficult to sell them that. So when I would try to sell them a Cisco router or switch and they didn't want to buy it, they would invariably maybe buy an HP switch and Sonic Wall router or something else. And what this ultimately ended up as is many customers having many different solutions. The challenge with this, of course, is as you start to grow your business, once you have 2, 3, 5, 10 people in your business, you will find that documenting how to do something on many platforms takes a long time. There's a lot more chance for error. There's a lot more chance for only having few people that can do the work, as opposed to standardizing on a specific platform. So why standardize? In my case, I just wanted everything to be simple. When my business partner was coming on board, I didn't want to, he was not a Cisco iOS type of dude. He did not know Juniper command line, did not know Cisco command line. He barely got along with HP command line. And so I knew that there was a need to simplify, and this was at this point is when we decided, okay, let's buy Meraki. Meraki will be our standard router for all our customers, and that's just what we did. We chose Meraki for routers, HP for switches, and at the time, Meraki for wireless as well. So this simplified a lot of the stack, and even when selling to new customers, it removed a little bit of like, what should we offer them? What should we sell them? It was always just the same package. We always offered a Meraki router, an HP switch, and a Meraki access point. And that was that. It became really easy to sell. Once our customers were all on the same platform, it was very easy to manage across all our customers. And so consider the difficulty that variety is going to bring to your business. I think we all start with the best intentions, and it's like, yeah, we know all these platforms, we can support anything you have, but this is only going to create difficulty down the line. I think most MSPs that have grown will tell you the same thing. They'll say just standardize on a stack, make it simple for your entire company to be able to support it, and it'll be a lot easier to grow. Obviously, that consistency of having the same platform means your staff are more consistent in delivering service, which in turn, consistent service means happy customers. And that's something that I've learned the hard way. Remove the chaos, remove the ambiguity, and just deliver consistency through standardization. Idea number 4 came from when I was a single man show, a one-man show. I remember I've always used Zendesk for my tickets. I've never had a PSA because they were just, as a one-man show, even as a 3-person business now, we just don't feel that we have enough latitude for deploying a large PSA. So we just use a ticketing system and we use QuickBooks for our billing, and that's it. But early on with Zendesk, I remember I was sending my customers surveys, and it was very difficult to get anything back because nobody wanted to survey me when I had just done the work and sent them the survey. So I think it's important that you consider, if you're a small operation, 1 person, 2 people, you probably don't want to send out any surveys, but you want to keep a finger on the pulse, as the expression is. Know how your customers are feeling about your service. Make sure you're talking to them on a regular basis. But if you are growing a little bit more and you have techs that are doing tickets and delivering service, you might want to consider some specific metrics that are really cool to have. Specifically around the priority level of tickets is really important, I think, for everybody to understand what is an urgent issue and what is a priority issue is very, very key to providing great service. But not only for your techs to know, but also your customers to understand what is considered an emergency or a priority issue. I think it's we're all familiar with the idea that every customer thinks their issue is an emergency, and it can be difficult to give the same level of service when everybody thinks that their own problems are an emergency. So it's important to communicate this back to customers. We have it in our managed services agreement that we explain what is considered a priority 1 issue and what's not. And so we try to remind them on a quarterly basis or yearly basis if there's any sort of abuse of that policy. TNT, which stands for today, not tomorrow, is an interesting metric. I think the amount of tickets that are closed in the same day, it can be a really good measure of whether customers are being dealt with quickly. When tickets sit for several days and sometimes a couple days without being even answered for the first time, there could be signs of trouble. It means staff can be overwhelmed and it's just not easy to keep track of stuff. Right along the lines of that is first call resolution, FCR. This is an interesting one to keep track of, but maybe not reward on, because one of the interesting things we saw when I went over to fully managed is that rewarding first call resolution ends up in people closing tickets very quickly, even when the issue is not entirely fixed or not completely done. And so I'd rather people have 2 or 3 ticket touches and make sure that everything is dealt with accordingly and resolved successfully and the customer does not have to call back, than try to close the ticket very quickly, ultimately to have it be reopened. Tracking ticket receipt is very important. This gives you a sense of if a customer is very noisy, is the term we use. If they are opening many tickets per month compared to other customers, you got to ask yourself, why is that? Is there a problem with this customer? Are they not? Do they have some larger issues that we could take care of to remove some of this extra noise? Same thing with how many hours are being spent per ticket. I think it doesn't matter necessarily how long it takes to resolve an issue. Sometimes some issues take a long time, others don't. But if you're seeing some basic issues take a long time, for instance, password resets or just creating a new user account in an environment, we see that sometimes it's because there's a lack of documentation, there's a lack of standardization, new people come on board, they don't know how to do something, now they have to ask everybody else. The customer experience score, or CES, or NPS, it's tracked a few different ways, is just how your customers are surveying or grading your staff for the service that they deliver on tickets. So all of these things are important to keep track of. There's an expression that is, you can't manage what you don't measure, is definitely true in this respect. I think it's very hard to know where to focus your effort in your business if you're not measuring some of these things. So I know whether you're using a PSA like ConnectWise, Autotask, or BMS, there's a lot of these metrics that you can get from those tools to get a sense of where you're going with the business. Keeping track of time is key. My mentality in the last few years is changing a little bit because my MSP is specifically owned only by the partners and there's no other employees. We don't care so much about tracking time, and so we're more focused on, you know, the ratio of the income we generate based on what we pay ourselves. And so we try to keep a factor of 2.5x of what we pay each other is what we try to make for the business. And so I think this is a great metric to consider in any size of business, because if you can enable your staff to be more creative, to bring more value to customers, and ultimately to help generate some of that revenue, it's also easier to pay them more. It's not always about the hours, it's about creating value. And I think that's the interesting transition I'm seeing a lot of MSPs going through today, is how can we get our employees to create more value instead of just work more hours. But it's important to look at key things when SLAs are missed. You know, why did this take a long time? How can we remove other tickets from being missed in the SLA? I think all that falls into delivering great service. There's a sort of an attitude of the service desk that when everybody is trying to succeed and helping each other to try and keep the business from having SLA misses, I think everybody works really well. But also very important is that people offer an SLA, they need to put some skin in the game. I think this is key to getting customers comfortable with why you're delivering service. And so I remember in the beginning, my MSA or my managed services agreement said things like, well, we guarantee that we'll answer your call within 1 hour if it's an emergency, but we have no control over the time to resolution. And so that's fine, but you know, anybody can answer the phone call, and so that's really not anything special. But what was really interesting is that in order to provide an SLA, it became really important to have conversations about the risk that is in the customer environment. How are they going to get rid of the risk? If they don't want to do a project to upgrade their servers, then they have to sign off on having that risk. And I think that conversation became more important as part of the process, which brings me to process. So I think one of the interesting things that I learned in my business is that with a very specific process of having every quarter a meeting with customers, and some of them are busy and some of them are smaller customers. Every quarter is not easy to do a meeting. Sometimes we do them twice a year, sometimes we do them once a year. It just depends on the customer. But having those meetings to go through the entire environment, we call these QBRs, or quarterly business reviews. By the way, I will be sharing some documents with all of you. Our QBR template, which is a sort of a framework for how to deliver this quarterly business review, as well as a checklist for onboarding. And hopefully those are useful, and you'll see my contact info there as well at the end. So if anybody wants to ask any questions or have a conversation, I'm always happy to engage. So I think what's important to going back to this process thing is that checklists, or how you approach process, can greatly simplify how you deliver service. But also more importantly is that the more process there is, the more consistent service can be. And as I said earlier, consistency will translate to very happy customers. As a consumer myself, There's nothing more frustrating than calling a vendor or a service provider and getting great service from one tech one day who knows what they're doing, can find information quickly, can follow the steps in the process, and then having to call again in a few weeks and getting somebody completely different that has no process or no steps to follow at all. Just that inconsistency is very frustrating to me as a consumer. And so I can only imagine with customers it's the same thing. You know, they call one day, they get one of your best techs, they're following process, great service, great experience. The next day, not so much. And so this checklist mentality is important, even if you don't have very extensive operating procedures or documentation on everything that your business does. Checklists can be a great way to just have a high level mental organization of how to do something. And now that we've launched checklists feature in IT Glue, hopefully this is going to be really useful for people. But one of the other reasons why checklists are important is because they prevent the shoulder tap. And so the shoulder tap is when, you know, somebody comes and interrupts you to ask, hey, you know, how do we log into this thing again? Or how do I get to the Meraki dashboard? Or how do I create port forwarding on the router? There's many things that come up with new staff or even old staff when there's new things that are being done. And so this is by far one of the things that creates the most time waste in a growing MSP. And there are surveys and studies that show that every time that somebody's interrupted, it takes about 30 minutes for that person to get back to what they were doing productively. And so consider how much time your business is wasting with interruptions by not having clear processes, clear checklists. Same idea with like, hey, who's got the password for this router? Maybe one of your technicians did the onboarding and they set up everything and remember it. They memorized it but never wrote it down. These things are going to cause time waste for everybody. So what are the challenges are things that create, removing things that create ambiguity. Passwords is just the beginning of all this. It's just an example of how bad things can get. But you know, consider other parts of your business, like how do we send out a newsletter? How do we do month-end invoicing? You know, if you have a 10-person IT business, you might have an accounting person in the business. And what if they're not able to do month-end billing? Will somebody else be able to follow a process to complete it? All these things start to create efficiencies in the business, and so processes are important. There's a funny expression that you can do things better, faster, or cheaper, but you can only do 2 of them. And so what's interesting about creating process and creating documentation in the business is that as you can do things better and faster, it will naturally be less expensive to deliver and do those things because it takes less time. And so time being the most expensive commodity in the business, the less you can spend time-wise doing anything, then the more you can achieve all 3 of these in the triangle. So definitely consider where there's maybe some waste in the business time-wise and how you can get rid of some of that waste. Now this next one, item number 6, is more of a, I call it a metaphysical item. This is not a technical revelation or anything like that, but this is kind of one of the things that I think every IT person goes through in one way or another, and it's that being in IT can be very hard. Customers have problems, they come to us with their problems, sometimes they're not the nicest people about their problems, and I think it can grind on us day after day and make us a little bit tired of the work, tired of the job. And so I remember I used to say to myself every day, why am I doing this? Am I going out into work today to do a great job, or am I ready to throw in the towel and stop doing this? And so ultimately what that really involved was like reminding myself of what was my goal, why am I doing what I'm doing? Again, going back to the purpose over mission and having a why. And I think ultimately getting some of these things taken care of early in the growth stage of the business is important, because just like problems can become bigger when you grow bigger. Good things can become also better as you grow larger. And so when things are efficient from the start, you can grow faster and more quickly, more efficiently. And so it's easier. Everything becomes easier by a multiple of, 1 + 1 = 3. The expression here is, how do you create that efficiency so that when you do have to bring another employee on board, it's only going to take a month to get them up to speed, and then everybody's happy. So I think that's important. As you grow, you're going to have more challenges, and dealing with some of these early on is important. Something that happened to me kind of by mistake is this thought leadership thing of presenting on topics of this nature, is that when I first spent a bunch of money buying the Mac RMM for my business, I couldn't afford going to a conference that I really wanted to attend. And so I remember seeing that there was a call for speakers. And so I submitted an application to speak on, I think, wireless design, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. And it was at a conference in Sweden. And so my talk was accepted, and I was able to attend the conference for free. And this became the reason why I was submitting applications to speak at conferences, because I'd get a free ticket to the conference. But what turned out to happen was I really enjoyed sort of telling some of these stories, and it helped me think about my own challenges and problems and their solutions. And I think one of the most cool things that I enjoy from conferences is those hallway conversations with other people about the challenges that they're having and how they're solving problems. And I think this thought leadership is important. And I mentioned earlier this idea of, like, what are you talking about on your website? If you're not addressing some of your customer specific needs as some of the topics on your website, I think you're doing it wrong. And that's, again, just my opinion. I used to be the guy that posted articles on how to do, failover with Cisco iOS for multiple WAN links. And then, somebody pointed out to me, well, how many of your customers do you think are interested in that blog post? And the reality is that none of them would be interested in that blog post. And today, I will be honest in saying that we don't really write anything anymore, because if I'm going to write a bunch of technical articles and they're not useful, then I'm just not going to write. Instead, we're starting to think about how can we talk about technology in our customer verticals. If we don't focus on any specific verticals, it'd be a lot of work to write about everything. But there are many MSPs that are very focused on manufacturing or health and dental or architecture and design. And so there are many things you could be talking about with regards to technology in those types of businesses that are really that thought leadership that your customers need. This is what will attract customers to your website and to have that conversation. A very difficult lesson I learned was definitely learning to manage my book of business. I think it's easy to forget that some small customers can be a very big drain on your time and on your service and your efforts. And so I think it's important to be able to proactively let some customers go. We've figured out that in our IT business, it's about the same amount of effort and work to support a 30-person business than it is to support a 5 or 8-person business. The difference, of course, is we can make 4 times as much supporting a 30-person business. And so why wouldn't we choose that size of business instead? So what they say is true. You have to proactively categorize your customers. I know that sometimes losing customers is not good. And if you're delivering poor service and that's why they're leaving, hopefully you can turn that around. But what's important is to categorize your customers, know where you need to spend your effort to turn your best customers into customers that are spending more money with you, and proactively letting go of those like C-level customers and making room for bigger and better customers. But also important about understanding which are your best customers is the ability to understand what you can bring in terms of new technology to them. So, if you've just become a Datto partner or a Kaseya unified backup partner or whatever solution there is, I think it's important to know which customers will be receptive to that new solution and which will not. I think the scorecard is really important. As part of the quarterly business review, we actually score our customers on a number of different areas, from a relationship score to a risk score to hardware lifecycle and warranty score. And so what's really interesting is we give them very specific visuals. We go through the entire environment. We look at the risk. We say, okay, well, this server is out of warranty now. We have a conversation with the customer and we get them to tell us how comfortable they are with the risk. And so, for example, one of the big mistakes IT companies make is that they don't have this conversation. And what happens is the customer assumes that the IT provider is taking care of everything. And that's obviously the worst case scenario for the IT provider, because it is really not their responsibility if the customer is not taking care of things, but that's the assumption. So one of the things that we do is when we go through the risks, we will actually put in a report in Excel the line items that are high risk with a little bomb icon like that. If everything is great, we put the green check mark. And invariably what happens after a few weeks is we get a call, the customer doesn't like that they had any bombs on their report and they want to get rid of the bombs. And so I think that visual really helps deliver the importance of the things that are a risk to the business. And so I'd love to talk more about how I deliver the quarterly business review and how we talk about risk. But maybe we can do another webinar with the nice guys from ACAB, with Claudio and Andrea. But I'll just give you the gist of it. Essentially, my conversation about risk is always to let the customer tell me where they're comfortable. So if a customer says, well, we can't be down, that can mean many different things. And so I'll just go through the exercise of asking a few questions. Okay, so are you comfortable with, 8 hours of downtime? If there was a flood in your server room, would you be okay with 3 days of downtime? Invariably, customers will come and say, oh, no, we can't have more than 2 hours of downtime. And so at that point, I get to explain. I say, okay, well, to have infrastructure that gives you less than 2 hours of downtime, it's going to cost this much. And then the conversation changes. Because, oh, well, maybe we're okay with 8 hours of downtime. And so there's a little bit of a negotiation there of risk tolerance, which I think is very important, because what you're doing in that process is letting the customer understand where they're comfortable with the risk. And that's the most important thing. My style is not one to force them to buy anything. I just want them to understand where they're comfortable. And based on that, we can make suggestions. And ultimately, it's always their decision. So I think this is very powerful. We do that with these visuals of the bomb and the lightning bolt and the check mark. And it really helps them understand their own risk, their own comfort, and everything else. I mentioned earlier that comparing your clients A, B, and C is important. What constitutes a client that you would proactively let go of or fire? I think it's important to know that so that you can make that space when you need to. Back in the beginning, for me, it was always feast or famine, as they say. I would take on any customer, any size, for any reason, as when I was growing. And over time, some of those customers were just really great people, and I had a very difficult time letting go of them. But I think over time, it's important to make that room for bigger and better customers. Also, through the QBR, or the quarterly business review, it's an opportunity to make your own customers accountable as well. If you're having difficulties with getting paid on time, or there's staff that you always have not so nice conversations with, these are great things to bring up proactively in these discussions so that they don't become something that you just want to fire the customer over many months later. And so I think recognizing that there's problems early on, it can be really helpful. Number 8, the profitability conversation. So as a small MSP, one of my goals was not so much to hire more people, but rather how to increase profitability. And so this presentation is based on my business from 2 or 3 years ago, but I'm happy to say that today it's doing a lot better, and we run at roughly 50% net profit, which is pretty exceptional for a small IT company. And I think one of the interesting things is that as you take on some of the tools for your business, you may not be in a position to negotiate, but it's important every year to review everything and understand where you can make bigger investments to get a better price on something. If you know, what if I buy those extra 1,000 endpoints of VSA? What if I buy these extra, 300 seats of Cisco Umbrella? It doesn't really matter what it is, but I think just being careful to review these on a regular basis can help you remove some of the costs that can creep up over time. Obviously, looking at how much time you're spending with specific customers can help you understand which are those C customers that are very noisy. And if there's nothing you can do to fix them, maybe it's time to free up their future, as they say. One of the things that was critical to my business was actually getting rid of the invoicing aspect of things. And so we use a platform called Connect Booster. I'm sure there's other tools in Italy that are similar, but we have everything on automatic payment on the first of the month. Obviously, we do some projects where we send out an invoice and we wait for payment, but our primary source of revenue, which is our recurring revenue, is always automatic and always on the first of the month. In fact, we require that customers do this per the contract, and this removes a lot of operational difficulty for us, because many years ago, I would be chasing some of these invoices for weeks because, people are busy, they forget. There's not like they're trying not to pay, but it just becomes a task, an extra task that you have to do. And as a small company, the less things you need to do, the better. Finally, and this is sort of, again, another one of those metaphysical items, is I think the biggest key, looking back, to how my business was able to grow, is to stop trying to solve the technical problems with customers, but rather looking to their business as a whole and helping them solve business problems, workflow issues, efficiency problems, that kind of stuff at the business level is a much more engaging way to help my customers. And I found that when I helped them with those things, the technology just came automatically. They'll keep their computers upgraded. Most of my customers have not had an issue in many years because, knock on wood, they have been very, very, they've been listening to me for years talking about process and the importance of keeping things running smoothly. And as a result, their businesses run smoothly as well. It only takes 1 or 2 years of getting rid of some of those issues for customers to finally believe that what you're bringing to the table is that value. And so, again, these are sort of what we call items that, in hindsight, I felt like they helped my business grow. Today, we're a business of 3 owners, soon to become 4 owners through a small acquisition. And it's very exciting still because I think there's lots of opportunity. Claudio and I were talking briefly before the webinar began about the Italian market, and his sense is that things run a little behind in the European markets in general in terms of how people are doing business. But I think these business problems exist everywhere, no matter how late people are to the game. And I think the sooner you can start addressing those business workflow issues, the sooner you can start delivering more value to your customers. And so with that, this is sort of brings us to the end of the webinar. And I promised some things that you could download. There's a link there at the top of the screen with some information. There's, again, a onboarding checklist that could be really useful in just helping you organize what are the things you want to collect when you first bring on a new customer. There's also the quarterly business review template or framework. And you may not necessarily understand how that works. So if you have any question about the QBR template, I'd more than welcome an email or or follow me on Twitter or any of the social media. I'd be happy to have a conversation. And I know that there's maybe some questions that have come up, and Claudio is going to be nice enough to translate, and we go through that as best as we can.
Thank you so much, Luis. You delivered an amazing content. You gave us a lot of things to think about. I got a couple of questions in a private chat. Io adesso gli faccio un paio di domande che mi sono arrivate in privato. Se volete fare altre domande nella chat, sentitevi liberi. I will do my best to translate the question. La prima domanda è se erano in pochi, se hanno outsourcato dei servizi. You said that you are running a small company, a small MSP, but did you outsource some services like, I don't know, help desk or security services? I mean, how can you actually deliver help desk or technical support if you are just 2 or 3 people?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so we did not outsource any of those services. We thought about it. And I think the way that, what's interesting is when I sold my business in 2011, I went to work at a larger MSP, and that larger MSP was about 40 people, 50 staff or so. There was a large tier 1 help desk, and there was tier 2 people and tier 3 techs, and pretty much all the different roles that you might find at a larger MSP. But what I found that was really interesting is that the small business customers, they maybe think they want a larger operation to support them, but it turns out what they really want is a better relationship. That was my experience, anyways. Any customer that's 30 people or less, they just want a good relationship, and as long as that expectation is being managed properly, I never had a problem solving issues with tickets. Also, I was a 100% Mac operation at the time, and obviously there's less issues 10 years ago with viruses and all that stuff on the Macs.
Yeah.
So it was an easier platform to run, I think, getting started. So I think I just did it myself, and so I was just available to customers to solve their tickets. If people opened a ticket, I was remoting onto the machine within a minute. I was sitting at my desk working on things, and if something came in, I'd deal with it. Our growth has always been very natural, very organic, and so I was never out there trying to go find new customers. And so I think that was the difference. That was what allowed me to provide service myself, is that I was not looking for new business, but rather customers were bringing new business to us. And the growth has always been very organic. This is why we stayed small. I think we had both been at larger MSPs at one point. And so what we wanted to do is not have to have a situation where we grew too large and then the service went down the tubes. And so we just wanted to stay small, grow profitably and slowly, and that's what we've been doing for the last few years.
Ok, ancora una domanda, che effettivamente quanti endpoint gestisce e qual è il prezzo medio per endpoint o per user? One more question, maybe just curiosity, how many endpoints are you managing right now, and which is an average price per device and or per user? If you can share such data.
That's a good question. I have all those figures. We look at these numbers on a regular basis. We have about 900 endpoints. About 300 of those are Mac endpoints, 320, and so the rest are Windows and Windows servers for the most part. We charge per user. There are exceptions to that rule. For example, there's a couple of customers. One of our customers is a retail store. And they have a lot of revolving staff that comes in for seasons and then leaves, but they stay on the payroll and they stay in their email and everything else. And so in situations like that, it's not fair to charge them per user. Instead, we charge per workstation for that particular customer. Our average per user or per workstation price is currently $107 Canadian on average. We have many legacy customers that are on a $100 per month per user plan. And some newer customers where we are including some additional stuff on a 125 per user per month plan, Canadian dollars. So 125 CAD in lira is roughly, oh, Google's not telling me the answer I want, but I would suspect it's about 99 US dollars, 100 US dollars per user per month on average.
Okay.
I will say, Claudio, sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
We were doing a per endpoint type of approach at the very beginning, and so
Yep.
you know, a server was $250 a month, and a printer was $15 a month, and a workstation was $20 a month, and I just found that the invoices were just really messy. I didn't like how much of a shopping menu that they became. A lot of the relationship with customers became about counting how many things were on the invoice to make sure that they weren't being overcharged. And so when I went over to the per user model, everything got a lot simpler. The all-in seat pricing became a lot more simple, and I prefer that method personally.
Sure, it's much more easier. And
yeah, agreed.
I mean, you do not add or remove employee as you add or remove other stuff, so it's much easier to build, to manage, and so on. One more question. L'altra domanda era se lui gestisce tutto o se c'è qualcosa che non fa. One more interesting question is, do you manage everything on the customer network? I mean, server, client, network devices, printers, and I don't know, Wi-Fi?
Yeah, definitely. Most of our customers are small enough that we do everything for them front to back. There's a couple of customers that we have where the agreement is to only manage their servers and their network. In some cases, it was a budgetary reason. They just want to pay as you go for other help. Ironically, they end up paying more per month than they would if they were just on the full plan. But that's just one of those things that people sometimes don't look at the big picture. But we can't force them to. You can take a horse to water, but you can make them drink.
Yeah, of course.
And so we definitely manage everything front to back. Most of our small customers, they don't have very big needs or requirements. A few of them have some cloud stuff, but mostly a small server with Active Directory environment. Some wireless and network, and we do the whole stack. And so this is where also that standardization of that stack really helped us be able to do that very efficiently, because if we bring on a new customer, we know exactly what we want to sell them, and any one of us can manage it very easily because it's exactly the same as every other customer.
Okay, the last question, because we don't want to steal all your time. Intanto vi ricordo che al link indicato sopra ci ha preparato dei documenti che vi possono servire per l'onboarding e il review mensile con i clienti. Non li ho neanche visti io, è una sorpresa anche per me. L'ultima domanda è: lui ci ha dato 9 consigli, ma se ne dovesse dare uno, qual è? Luis, the last question is, you gave us 9 tips, 9 advice, 9 best practices, but if you have to choose one, which is your favorite? I mean, the standardization, the process, the why, the margin, just one.
That's a tough, I think, if I absolutely had to choose just one, it would probably be the standardization. I think that's one of the things that gave us the most time back, because standardizing means we also do less documentation because it's the same for every customer. Standardizing also means that there's less questions about what we're going to deploy or what we're going to do. Standardizing just also removes a lot of the ambiguity for customers, because we make it a requirement that they have those things when they come on board if they need a network refresh. Obviously, not every customer needs to replace their entire network every time you bring on a new customer, but I think that we can articulate that value very easily to the customer, say we can deliver better and faster service when you're on these products, because this is what we know extremely well. And I think this is why that specialization or that standardization is going to be so important for businesses to be able to, or MSPs to be able to grow. Standardization would be my choice.
Thank you so much for shrinking all the webinar in just one actionable action. Okay, so I have to thank you for your time and once again for your great content. I'm actually delighted from the content that you deliver to us, and also for the plain English. I'm sure that everyone was able to understand. So thank you so much, Luis, for this webinar. And maybe, as you already said, maybe we will involve you in other webinars like how to conduct QBR with customer and so on. Let me think about it, and I will involve you.
Absolutely, I would love to. Mille grazie. Thank you for your patience with the English. I know that now you're going to get busy and put subtitles on the recording, right, before you send it out to everybody. Maybe not. You didn't think that was funny, obviously.
Ok, thank you so much. Torno un attimo anche in italiano a parlare.